Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful, fantabulous, and mystical day. Over in the mystical side of life, we're over here doing some painting for another cover of Milk. If you guys didn't know what Milk is, I'll get into that in a little bit. But before I do, let me explain a little bit about who I am and what I do. My name is Emmanuel Aguilar, aka Mystic Fox 4, and I do character design and illustration. It's something that I've always kind of liked and always really enjoy. I'm learning things all the time, and I'm always having fun in my sketchbook, which maybe we'll talk a little bit more some other time. But right now, we already have a script planned out, which is something new and unique that I don't usually do. So let me just pull up my reference. So you guys aren't seeing this, but I typed out a little thing for you guys to be able to easily understand if the audio quality changes but slightly. It's because I'm moving away the sound blocker. That is actually making my voice sound a little bit better. It's like a little bit more, tolerable. Special thanks to my cousin who's letting me use his microphone whenever I'm over his house. Big shout outs, lots of love. And lots of love to everybody who supports and watches these videos. I highly appreciate you, and you guys are awesome for watching. So let's hop into it. So for starters, this episode is going to be titled, why do I like fantasy? Why do I draw fantasy? Why would you draw fantasy? What's so interesting about fantasy? What's with all this talk about fantasy, Mystic Fox? Why do you like fantasy? I don't get it. It's boring. And we might answer a couple of those questions today. But before I get into that, I do want to point out that commissions are currently open, and they've been open since the beginning of summer. And I have been getting a lot of commissioners and a lot of people who enjoy my work asking me to make their characters either for D&D or anything that they particularly like in a non-commercial way as a private thing. Commission sheets are available on my Twitter. So if you don't know what that is, it is Mystic Fox 4. And if you just want to see my stuff and you're on the Instagram, feel free to DM me, and I'll get you sorted and I'll send that over to you, the commission sheet. It ranges from $15 to $20 to $100 depending on what it is you're looking for and what it is I can provide you. And I try to keep everything pretty high quality just because I know you guys really enjoy your characters and enjoy when somebody is making something for you, because it's something that you created on your own, whether it be for Dungeons and Dragons, space games, tabletop games, video games, stories, comics, whatever. Feel free to let me know in a DM. So, without out of the way, my Instagram will be linked down below as well as my Twitter. So, now I wanted to talk a little bit about the steps of it. But I think I could just do that when you guys message me. So a while back, I was doing a lot of fantasy stuff, and I still currently am doing a lot of fantasy stuff. So one of a question that somebody had asked me recently was, why do I like fantasy? So I was at a convention. Sorry, not a convention. I was in the Facebook group, and somebody had made a thread that said, what attracts you to fantasy? And they were talking a lot about their childhood and kind of how they always were really into Link and The Legend of Zelda. And they were particularly talking about Majora's Mask and how it made them feel. But one of the things that I kind of always have been a big thing, or has always been a big thing to me, is I've always really liked elves, right? And this may sound a little bit weird, but elves have a lot of mystery and magic to them, and at least they do to me. So I just wanted to share some of that, and see if you guys enjoy. And if you guys don't agree, maybe you guys have a different idea of elves, and I would love to hear it. Or fantasy in general. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on fantasy and what specifically of fantasy attracts you to it. For me, what attracts me to fantasy is well, actually, what attracts me to elves in general, right, is culture and manners, right? So elves are very mystical beings in my imagination, in my head, and just seeing how they're kind of interpreted through kind of the history of the fantasy franchise is really interesting. Some people depict them kind of like evil creatures, while others depict them as power hungry beings, or maybe they're even consumed with nature and they become like these kind of drow creatures, which is always interesting to me because elves, drows, and all of these types of creatures are extremely different creatures, but they kind of cross with each other. And I think it's also how people have come up with a notion of a goblin, right? So there's different types of goblins, and I can get into this in another video entirely because I saw something recently in someone's video and they brought it to my attention. But goblins, there's a lot of different types of goblins, right? So there's like red caps and stuff, but they all kind of do something different, and not all of them are aggressive savages. Some of them are just really kind of seeking a place to be and a place of being. But we'll get into that in another video because I don't want to dwindle too much on the stuff that seems more evil, but more on the lighter side of fantasy, right? Well, what else attracts me to elves? Well, I've always liked that elves kind of had that mystery and around them because of the magical factor. Specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, or actually, I guess I could compare it to the Lord of the Rings, actually. So in Lord of the Rings, there's wood elves, and I guess there's high elves. I don't really know if they're high elves specifically, but Legolas is more of a wood elf, at least in my imagination, or off the top of my head. And I've always kind of liked the notion of a wood elf, like a very experienced being who is also very light. Which, if some of you didn't catch, Legolas is actually extremely light, because elves by nature are very light creatures. So that's what enables them to be so agile, right? And I think part of that is the magical kind of part taking place because they're taller than humans usually, and they're a lot more slender than humans. So it would make sense for them to be somewhat lighter, but not incredibly lighter, but they're ridiculously light. They can swing on the neck of a horse and not bother the horse. And when you think about that and put it into context, that's really light. So there's a lot of little things I think that attract me to it. I think it's a lot of just general interest in what other people have created and how I can use that to my benefit, or maybe not my benefit, but like add to my world and my perspective on certain creatures or beings or races in Dungeons and Dragons, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons or whether it be just fantasy lore, right? And I've always kind of been interested in learning more about the different factions of characters, and I've been doing more and more research whenever I get the chance to. But I think that's a big thing, is that fantasy isn't really one of those things that is a solved thing. It's very much created by the ideas that people have created themselves, or that have been instilled in them by others. And then when you get more people to add to that, it just makes it all the greater. I'm one of those people that really likes to put context to things and give people a reason why something's happening, as some of my friends like Amelia would know. So when a character does something, I like them to have a reason for doing it. Or if a character learns a new skill, I want them to have a reason for wanting to learn the new skill, right? And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with just fantasy in general, because I enjoy that people create these magnificent, lores and different traits, right, that these characters have. But for me, it's also adding to the spectrum of the creativity in general, and that large amount of knowledge basis. And some people don't even know about the large amount of research and creativity that people have kind of put into grounding these creatures in reality. But I find it always really interesting and fun to see different people's takes on them. And I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of fantasy, where there is no right or wrong answer because it's all fantasy. Like, it doesn't exist. But I think that's probably the number one thing, is that you can do what you want. And if people can tell you, oh, that's not true or that's not correct, right? But in reality, there's nothing really that you can say against something being wrong, because it doesn't really exist. Now, if you compare it to a movie, or if you compare it to a show, in that regard, yes, you can be wrong, because it's something that somebody has already established. But in the sense of you just saying, oh, hey, here's my elf that I thought of, and this is their story, they can't really take that away from you, because it's your own concept. It's whatever you thought. And, just thinking back, I remember when I was younger, I would sit around kind of thinking, if I was an elf, what I would be like, right? Like, putting myself in the fantasy realm. And I remember this when I was really, really young. And I remember thinking about the mannerisms that one of the characters in Lord of the Rings kind of had, like a certain demeanor that elves kind of gave off, which was like a very, I want to say almost pompous, like they were very stout and I guess forward would be a good way of putting it. They knew what they wanted to know, and they knew it well. And they had this kind of ego to it, where they didn't want to admit that they were wrong. And I felt like those were some of the traits that I used to have, that I kind of felt were similar to elves, even though maybe at that moment I didn't look like an elf. Even now I don't look like an elf. But it's always something that's really kind of sat in the back of my mind on, if I was an elf, what would I look like? How would I speak? How would I walk? Is that influenced by my history? Of course it would be. Well, what would my history be? Where would I, and I think because I thought of how I would put myself in the world, the second part to that, which is context, came into play. And I think that's also, something important to know, is that I kind of just enjoyed it in that moment. Yeah. I have a couple other things to talk about that I wanted to mention as well. For those of you who are still around, thank you again for listening. A lot of this is just me kind of talking, because I did have to, or I did want to answer some of these questions, because I thought they were really fun questions to answer. You can do this yourself too, like identify why you like something or why you don't like something, which is something that I kind of want to do in the future. So if you don't like it, just let me know in the comments below. There's no need to send me rude messages or anything like that. This is all fun. So I'm thinking back, I had a Tech Wizards video that I also made maybe a few months ago. It was titled Tech Wizards Concept, and people could vote on which one they wanted to have finished, and then I would make a step-by-step kind of video, kind of like I did for the Corrupt Paladin series, which if you haven't watched, you can go ahead and watch it now before you continue this video with a link. It's either going to be in the description or it's going to pop up on as a annotation. But I think I put it up on a Facebook group. It's like a D&D fantasy group. You can go ahead and search it. Just search up D&D fantasy art, and you'll probably find it. It's one of the few first ones that appear. And I put it up in a poll to see what people thought, right? And I'll put it up on the screen right now so you guys can have a little bit of context to what I'm talking about, like the poll that I put up, or not the poll, but the tallies. So I had A, B, and C. A being the stout kind of traditional wizard, B B was a more non-traditional wizard because it was a girl with kind of a jetpack, and she's she's like flying and being very fun, like more of a fun drawing. And then the last one is also a fun drawing because he uses a lot of round shapes, but he's supposed to kind of imbue like a more tinkerer type of zombie of wizard. And I've always liked kind of characters that would tinker with something in order to make something, do things. I've always been interested in the kind of MacGyver type of character, where they can put something together and it manages to work somehow, and then they use that to fight against whatever the odds are, right? I think part of that also plays into fantasy, where if you try to portray yourself into fantasy, or kind of make your own character in a fantasy setting, I think it would be more of I think for myself at least, I would be more of a person that would create something that would either help me or other people, just because it's something that I've always really enjoyed. Like a tinkerer type thing. I'm not saying to make like explosives or anything, but just something that adds something that is helpful, like maybe tools or special backpack. Because I don't see myself as a fighter. And you guys can comment down below. What type of class would you be in a D&D setting if you yourself were to be teleported into this type of universe? And I always have a lot of fun just thinking about this while I'm working on something. At least when I get to the rendering phase. Because sometimes when it gets to the rendering stage, once you've practiced enough, it just kind of becomes a mindless practice where you're just kind of doing it to finish. And I don't always get to that state with every piece, but for some pieces I do, because it's just clean up and polish. But I always think about that in the back of my mind, whether I would be maybe a mage or a rogue or maybe a fighter. But I don't think I can be a fighter. I don't think I would. I'm not the confrontational type of person. At least I don't feel like I am. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I'm just thinking out loud at this point. I made a little reel of like what I would talk about for my video, but I always seem to kind of like sway away from it, because I feel like when you get kind of a good idea and you start kind of chipping at it and thinking about what you're trying to say, you kind of may think of something new and different. And I don't make these videos to be super popular or to have all the attention in the world, because I enjoy making these videos sometimes, and most of the time I just kind of put them together, and then I have painting and stuff, and I try to communicate that through my videos, and hopefully people like it and they comment and tell me what their thoughts are. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff to think about, like what race would you be as well? Would you be more of a halfling, where you're a small creature with big feet, and you kind of more enthusiastic about life? Would you be a very isolated, stubborn dragon folk, I believe their name is, where they're half dragons, half human? Though that's an amazing race, by the way. There are these people that were dragonborns. There you go. Dragonborns are amazing characters and amazing, like, they're people. They actually, I believe, detest dragons, or they detest gods, and they believe that they have full control over their history, or what they do, and they have a lot of pride. They're very prideful people. So if you give them a task, they will never accept a task that they cannot do. And I think that's a really cool trait to have in a person. Yeah. I've been doing working on a little project called Milk. It's and that it's what you're seeing in the back. Sorry, it took me 21 minutes to tell you that. But it's going to be a little magazine thing that I put together. Originally I thought it was going to be for my portfolio, but I figured I'm just going to do it for fun, and then for my portfolio I'm going to do something else. Cuz I've been really enjoying splash art, and I've been studying it for a hot minute. So I figured I'd delve more into that for my portfolio work and character design rather than splitting it off and making it all these other things. Because I feel like I tend to reach for everything. But I think that's just the artist mindset, you know? You think about a lot of things at the same time and you try to do everything, but then you realize that you're human. There's only 24 hours in the day. And at some point you have to just step back and think, am I working towards my goal or working against my goal? You know? And I think more often than not I'm working towards my goal, but in an unorthodox way, where maybe it is I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but am I doing what I want to do? And I think that's where you kind of separate. I was watching some talks of people and thought process, and I've been learning a lot from people kind of teaching how to get better at something. And you can go ahead and do research on this on your own. But what I found is that, and I don't know the exact sources or anything, so don't take this to heart. This is just me talking. But the more you practice something, the better you're gonna get at it. Whether it's good or bad, you can only get better. You can't get worse. But you can practice something the wrong way and get better at doing it the incorrect way. It's like doing a push-up the wrong way. But I feel like there's a lot of things like that. Like in fantasy, we have a lot of different ideas of how an elf would be, for example. But how many of those ways is the way that you like? How many of those ways do you want to portray yourself? Like the history of the character, that is. The way that you walk and talk. I think those all play into it as well. Comment below, do you guys think that sometimes people may project their core values onto themselves to play a character? And I think I've had this conversation with a couple friends here and there about why people play certain types of characters. And I think some people play characters because they want to see how they would act in those shoes. Because you get to pick and choose what kind of shoes you want to wear in this realm of Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that's a very beautiful thing, because you can play a character that you absolutely hate, and then you absolutely know that you don't like this type of person, so you won't be that type of person in real life. But I also think people play things that they really enjoy. But that's just personal traits thing. So when would you know the line between the two is crossed too far? Maybe that didn't make sense. Maybe it did. I don't know. Anyways, dudes, I'm just rambling at this point. So I'm going to cut it here. After almost 30 minutes of talking into the microphone, I think I got enough ideas out there and positive stuff and things to maybe have you think about while you guys watch the video and time lapse of me doing the illustration for the milk cover. The milk book, or the milk little magazine that I'm putting together, is going to be a compilation of items and things that are going around Dungeons Dragons universe, things that would essentially be on sale, locations to look out for, and vendors that are either good or bad, depending on the items that they're currently selling. You can feel free to look through the little magazine in the future when it's finished, and use whatever you like in your D&D campaigns. If you do, please comment down below and let me know what happens. Always interested to hear stories of your characters interacting with things that I create. If you didn't know, if you've never played D&D before, I do have a character sheet that you can download for free, complete with art assets, the character bio, and the character sheet in my Corrupt Paladin series. It is a merman who is a paladin. So you can go check that out later on if you ever feel the need to. But I feel like this was a good progressive talk. I think we found some things that we liked and some things that we didn't like. Progress. All right, guys. I'm going to cut it there, like I said earlier. As always, don't forget to like the video if you do like it, because it helps people find the video and it helps people know, hey, this video has good information. And share it with your friends, because you never know. Maybe they are interested in something you like. And is that everything? Oh yeah, make sure you subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you like the video. Because there's probably more that's going to be coming in the future, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification as soon as it comes out. Basically YouTube's saying, hey, can you like this video twice or subscribe to this video twice? Because one subscription isn't enough. You have to hit the bell. Why they do, I don't know. As always, guys, don't forget to stay mystical.